Balto and the Great Race, Chapter 4, Bluff, Alaska. The tiny town of Bluff wasn't much more than a few buildings near Daniels Creek, but it was bustling with activity when Balto and the team pulled in. Men had flocked to Bluff because black sand had been found surrounding Daniels Creek, and people thought black sand was a sign that gold was there. But on the day Balto arrived, no one was thinking about gold. Every hope was focused on the antitoxin serum, packed in glass vials, that was making its way westward. Casson unharnessed the team and rubbed ointment into the dog's feet. All experienced mushers know that one of their most important jobs is to take care of their animals' feet. Ice crystals can be as sharp as glass. A neglected cut on a running dog's paw can quickly become a very serious injury. In Bluff's central building, the telegraph buzzed with news. From Nome, it was reported that the diphtheria epidemic continued to grow worse by the hour. 5 people had died, and possibly over 100 people were infected. As feared, among the sickest were many children, as well as a great number of native Alaskans, also known as Inuits. For over 10,000 years, Inuits had lived in Alaska, hunting and fishing to survive. When Europeans first arrived in the 1700s, they brought with them diseases that the native people had no resistance to. Diphtheria and influenza were 2 such diseases that often took deadly tolls on the native population. From Nenana, word had come to Bluff that a musher named Wild Bill Shannon and his team of 9 dogs had packed up the serum and completed the first run of 60 miles on the Tanana River. The temperature at Shannon's departure was 40 degrees below zero. The latest news had come through on the morning of January 29th, 20 hours after Shannon loaded the serum from the train onto his dog sled. Witnesses reported that the 3rd relay team had received the serum. Led by Bill Green, the team was heading for a place called Fish Lake. There, the 4th relay team would take over and continue toward the Yukon River. There were many small settlements along the Yukon, some equipped with telegraph equipment. Updates would continue to be sent. All reports agreed that the teams were making extremely good time, but it was far too early to celebrate. An inexperienced person might think that leading a dog team along the ice on the frozen river would be simple work. After all, it was a natural road, so it would be hard to get lost, and there wouldn't be trees and rocks to avoid. But mushers who had driven teams over the Yukon River knew all the problems they could run into. For example, snow was piled high on the banks of the frozen river. A musher had no choice but to keep to the open center of the ice. There, he and the dogs were a target for the powerful Alaskan winds that swept violently down the Yukon. These winds could easily knock a man off his sled. The icy gusts could also bring temperatures down as far as 60 degrees below zero. Once the sun set, a musher ran the risk of freezing to death. A musher also had to worry about being attacked. Alaska is home to a great variety of wildlife. There are 4 kinds of bears alone: grizzlies, black bears, Alaskan brown bears, and polar bears. Coyotes, wolverines, lynx, and wolves are plentiful. But one of the greatest threats to a sled dog comes from an animal that might not seem to be very dangerous: the moose. No one knows why, but it is not unusual for a team to be ferociously attacked by a moose. Perhaps moose are unable to distinguish dogs from wolves, their natural enemies. Whatever the reason, the attacks are often deadly. A moose can come out of nowhere, leaping through the air to crush the dogs under 600 pounds of furious flesh. Once the team has stopped, a moose uses its powerful legs and hooves to kick and slice at the animals. A musher trying to help his dogs can be injured or killed himself. Many mushers carry axes or guns with them in case of a moose attack. However, there is never a guarantee that they could get to the weapon in time. While the men in Bluff considered these dangers, more news came. Good news. Cassin's friend and Balto's owner, the great Leonard Sapala, was on the move with his famous racing dogs, Togo, in the lead. Sapala was headed to Nulato, a town over 250 miles from Nome. There he would wait for the last Yukon River team. Once the case of antitoxin reached him, he would immediately take it to Bluff, where Cassin, Balto, and the rest of the dog team were waiting. Curled in his bed of hay, Balto heard Sapala's name being spoken. It had not been that many years since he had been brought as a puppy to Sapala. He remembered the hours Sapala had spent training and coaching him to be a sled dog. With Gunner Cassin as musher, Balto had run alongside Sapala's team at the Hammond Consolidated Goldfields. Pacing back and forth over the wooden floor, Cassin could not even think of sleeping. He constantly went outside to see how Balto and his team were. He checked and rechecked his equipment and ran his hands over the harnesses to test for weakness. He cleaned the sled runners until they were slick as ice. Balto waited patiently as Cassin examined each of his paws, rubbing dose after dose of protective ointment into the leathery pads. Balto's patient example reminded Cassin that he needed to eat. Once the relay team arrived, it might be many hours or even days before he would be able to rest and eat. Amid the clicking of the telegraph and the murmur of men's voices, the lights in Bluff's wooden buildings stayed on all through the night. Each small structure acted as a beacon, lighting the way for the relay team, which might be rushing toward them under the cover of darkness.